President Trump traveled to the battleground state of Ohio on Thursday. While there, he signed an executive order on medical supplies. It requires the federal government to buy any, quote, essential coronavirus drugs or equipment from U.S. companies instead of from foreign countries. This development takes place as the U.S. inches closer to 5 million confirmed cases of COVID-19. Skyler Henry is at the White House with more.
President Trump attacked his political rival, Joe Biden, minutes after arriving in the key swing state of Ohio.
We're running against a radical left ideology. Their messenger is Sleepy Joe.
Ahead of the trip, Biden also slammed the president as, quote, desperate to distract from his own failures. Later, President Trump toured a Whirlpool factory. Ohio's Republican governor, Mike DeWine, tested positive for coronavirus shortly before the president arrived, so he was not allowed to greet the president.
We want to wish him the best. He'll be fine.
A White House official tells CBS News Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell met with President Trump Thursday morning to discuss the ongoing negotiations towards a coronavirus relief bill.
Unemployed Americans need these endless talks to finally bear fruit.
Nearly 1.2 million Americans filed new unemployment claims last week, and about 16 million Americans are receiving jobless benefits. The Democrats want to maintain the expired $600 weekly enhanced payments as part of a large-scale relief measure, while Republicans want to slash that amount.
It will only get worse if we do not make the necessary investments. Pay now or pay later, much more later.
White House negotiators say they want to have an agreement by the end of the week, and the president has threatened to take executive action if talks fail.
And Skyler joins us now from the White House. Skyler, so good to see you. The Senate will be delaying its August recess to continue negotiating coronavirus relief. What's the latest on these talks?
Well, hey, Lana, good evening to you. Well, the Senate has adjourned until next Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if we were expecting to see any sort of talks continue from at least the Senate side, that will be delayed. We did hear from White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows as well as Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin earlier today. They did say that they came to some sort of progress today after working for the last 7 or 8 days in terms of negotiations on this next coronavirus relief package. But they did say that they're still not where they need to be in terms of this self-imposed timeline that both them and top Democrats have kind of given themselves in order to work this thing out. So, of course, this seems as though this is going to go into next week here. Obviously, a big point of contention is still those unemployment insurance benefits and just how much money will go to Americans, as well as making sure that the Americans who may be affected by this are taken care of. That includes thinking about things like those eviction moratoriums as well. And so now we're just waiting and seeing what kind of happens next. But we do know that these talks will continue here, although some lawmakers did say that they're less optimistic than they were earlier this week in terms of something being done soon, because at this point they're just so far apart on so many different issues here when it comes to things like getting money to state and local governments as well. So there are a lot of different areas that the two sides can't seem to agree on up until this point. And so now I think waiting in the balance here is those tens of millions of Americans, many of whom have filed for unemployment and are waiting for some sort of package there so that they can start to receive some of those benefits from this coronavirus relief.
Well, and given that divide, I think people are increasingly looking at what President Trump said he was going to do. He had mentioned, as you explained, that he's preparing to sign an executive order if these lawmakers can't reach a deal. Do we have a better idea of what sort of relief the president plans to offer and where he stands on some of those contentious issues?
Well, here's the thing. The Trump administration said, or at least the president at least, he says that he wants Congress to figure this out. He doesn't want to step in. But I think as time kind of goes on here, he has explored the opportunities or the areas of implementing these executive actions, particularly as it pertains to these unemployment benefits. He also wants to extend these eviction moratoriums, maybe until the end of the year here that we have at least heard of. And so now I think it's just a matter of waiting and seeing. Just if these talks, continue to fizzle out, or if there is no progress here, I think that's where the president will step in. We heard from Mark Meadows earlier, who did allude to that a little bit. He said that, they feel as though there is progress being made on the Hill. That's why they are there, them being the members of the Trump administration who are going back and forth with top Democrats. They feel as though progress is being made. If not, then they wouldn't be there at all. But as time wanes on here, I think that's when the president will start to explore these executive actions to step in to try to help these millions of Americans who need the money here, Lana.
All right. Well, the president also says that he's optimistic that there will be a coronavirus vaccine around Election Day. Where is he getting that statistic, or that projection, I guess? And how does that compare with what other White House officials and health experts are saying?
Well, this has been widely viewed, at least up until this point, as more so political pressure than anything else. We have heard from members of the coronavirus task force who said that they were, quote, cautiously optimistic about a vaccine being developed by the end of this year, if not then by early next year. But I think what's happening here is that the president is starting to kind of look for his positioning here as we get closer and closer to November 3rd. And if he finds a way to have this vaccine in place, then he can say, hey, listen, we were a part of something that no one in our lifetimes has ever been a part of before in terms of going through this pandemic. And look, because of Operation Warp Speed and because of the coronavirus task force, we were able to implement a vaccine here. Now, we did hear from Dr. Anthony Fauci on this topic, who said that while it is a possibility that we see a vaccine by the end of the year, there's no real way to ensure that it will be not only safe, but effective. Now, members of the World Health Organization echoed a similar sentiment as well. But still, though, the president seems relatively confident that there is going to be some sort of vaccine available by the November 3rd Election Day kind of area there. So it's a matter of waiting and seeing if the president is right, or if he's just trying to put political pressure on those vaccine manufacturers to try to get something approved by that time.
Well, speaking of the election, Skyler, the Trump campaign is calling for a fourth debate against presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. What's their reasoning, and is that likely going to happen?
Well, based off of some of the interviews that we've seen with the president over the last few days, he has this position that there needs to be an earlier debate, preferably in the earlier part of September, because there are a lot of ballots, particularly as there starts to be a focus of mail-in ballots being issued out to so many different states. He feels as though people will have made up their mind before the debates are scheduled to happen. Obviously, the first presidential debate up until this point is September 29th in Ohio, but he feels as though that should be moved up here. Now, we did see the commission respond to the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, earlier today. They said that they feel as though there's a difference between ballots being issued by a state, and then there's a difference between voters who are under no compulsion to return their ballots before any sort of debate is to happen. Now, they compared this time this year as opposed to what it was in 2016, where less than 1% of voters actually submitted their ballots before that first election, where it was kind of around the same time here. Now, that what they did acknowledge that they feel as though that there's going to be obviously a significant number of mail-in ballots because of the coronavirus pandemic, but they feel as though these debates have been widely publicized, and they feel as though if anybody is going to wait and see what happens in these debates, they have ample time to not only watch what happens in the debate, but then mail in their ballot after the fact there, Lana.
Well, I, for one, am always interested in watching those debates. Skyler Henry, thank you.
All right, Lana, thanks.